home. They did a lot of different things because they know that they don't necessarily need to report back to work until sometime next year.
All right, so it's 10:05. Let's go ahead and get officially started. So greetings, my name is Kevin Carroll. I am the Executive Director of Tech San Diego. If you don't know about Tech San Diego, go to our website at techsd.org. We're a trade association representing small, mid-sized tech companies in the region. And one of our jobs is really, especially through the pandemic, is just bringing forth information about what's going on, and talent being a major part of our portfolio at Tech San Diego. We have several talent-related offerings, including a university talent initiative where we're promoting university talent to select the region as their career destination. But talent is the economic development of this century, and it's an issue that pervades not only the C-suite but entire companies. And we were talking earlier about the resources that companies put into talent acquisition, and it certainly is the critical issue of our time. And so this is very timely. We've grown to rely on CBRE for producing very timely and interesting reports on kind of scoring the tech talent, especially with other regions. And this is an addition to that series. And we wanted to get Colin in here, especially now because so many things are fluid and changing, and to give us a little bit of a snapshot into what's going on. So Colin has presented to our board before. We've grown to really rely on him to give us this information. And so I'm going to let Colin introduce himself, but the next person I'm going to turn it over to is our senior CBRE representative, the great Dennis Hurst. And Dennis will introduce a little bit about CBRE, and then we will go straight into Colin. So Dennis, I'm not going to read your bio because it's long and it includes a lot of things that it might be a little strange, but go ahead and introduce yourself a little bit, and then CBRE, and then let's turn it over to Colin and find out what's going on with tech talent.
All right, so as many of you know, CBRE is the world's largest provider of commercial real estate services. We're a Fortune 150 company. I'm the most senior member of CBRE's San Diego tenant representation or occupier services group in San Diego. And I'm very pleased to introduce Colin Yasukochi. He's the executive director of CBRE's newly formed Tech Insight Center, which provides thoughtful real estate market perspectives on the rapidly evolving tech sector. He's been in the commercial real estate business for more than 20 years. He frequently provides expert commentary on behalf of CBRE for local and national news media, and has authored many tech-focused reports, including Scoring Tech Talent that we're going to hear about in greater detail today. Colin grew up in Hawaii, and he moved to San Francisco in 2000, and was previously with Grubb & Ellis and JLL, so we have that in common. So without further ado, Colin, it's your show.
So right before Colin starts, first of all, Dennis, I also forgot to recognize, Dennis is a board member for Tech San Diego. So Dennis, thank you for that. And I'm going to explain real quick. So on your GoToWebinar, there's a place for you guys to ask questions. We're going to be monitoring those questions. Normally, we're going to go ahead and wait until the end of the Colin talking to answer those. But if there's anything that's really pressing, we'll make a judgment call. And if we need to interrupt, we certainly will. So make sure to get those questions in, and then we'll ask those at the end of the formal presentation. Didn't mean to interrupt your hand over to Colin, so we'll turn it over to Colin.
Yeah, no, thank you very much, Kevin, and Tech San Diego and Dennis. It's great to be here this morning, and all those of you who have come on to the webinar. And I think we have some really great information for you with regard to our 2020 Scoring Tech Talent Report released about 3 weeks ago, giving you a pretty good perspective on what the talent market looks like, how San Diego relates to other markets across the country, and what are some of the positive attributes and developments that have been going on in San Diego, even amidst the pandemic. So, with that, as mentioned, send in your questions. I'm going to speak for about 30 minutes, and if there are pressing questions, as Kevin mentioned, we will address those as we go. If not, there will be plenty of time after my prepared remarks to answer any questions you have, whether they're on the Scoring Tech Talent report or they're topics around San Diego, because we do have other experts and who could also chime in. I got Dennis here, who's very, very familiar with the San Diego market. So with that, a little bit of background on the Scoring Tech Talent report. And so Tech Talent, what we're really talking about here is a labor market report. So we analyze the tech talent in 50 markets across the US and Canada. And when we say tech talent, what we're looking at is what you do for your occupation, not necessarily who you work for. So tech talent ranges anywhere from someone who is a software developer, someone who could be a hardware engineer, or someone who could be a data systems administrator or analyst. So it ranges the whole gamut of technical roles. And again, it's really about what you do for your job and not necessarily what company you work for. So towards that end, in the US, there's 5.4 million individuals who perform technical roles across all industries. So the largest industry that employs tech talent is the high-tech industry. And you can see on this first graphic that it shows you that 37% of the 5.4 million tech talent workers in the US work for tech companies. What that also means is 63% of them don't. So every company, every industry needs some level of tech talent, and that has grown tremendously over time. What you'll see is that professional services, finance, insurance, real estate companies, transportation and warehousing, manufacturing, education, healthcare, you name it, it's really across the board that tech talent is employed in. And so when we looked at the tech talent for each of the 50 markets that we tracked, we aggregated all of those roles by market to determine how large the tech talent labor force is in each market. What you'll see is that the San Francisco Bay Area is the largest by a considerable amount. So there's about 380,000 people in the Bay Area who perform technical jobs. That's about 100,000 more than New York City, which is number 2, followed by Washington, DC, Toronto, Canada, and Dallas, Fort Worth. You'll see San Diego at about 77,000. And so that's about the 18th or 19th largest market in the country. So it's pretty substantial in size, but not compared to necessarily the Bay Area. And part of the reason for that too is that we do not include scientific occupations in this tech talent because we're focusing really more on the tech industry than life sciences. And so the number is probably would be higher if we included the large scientific and life sciences practice in the San Diego region. So with that, what's really important to better understand as a tech employer is where the tech talent actually lives. So you'll see on the right-hand side of your screen a heat map of the density of tech talent workers by where they live. And the largest, most dense region is in the University Town Center area. You'll see the dark, reddish colors on the map. And there's about 5,000 people who live in that particular area that are employed in tech talent occupations. I think, sorry, 12,000 was the number there. The Sorrento Mesa area, I'm sorry, is the largest region, followed by the University Town Center, which is probably the highest density area in the San Diego region with tech talent. The downtown and Pacific Beach areas are also, areas that are high density areas with regard to having a younger population base, which tends to be where the most amount of talent flows into the tech industry. You also have the Mission Valley area, which is not highlighted, but you can kind of see it north of the downtown area as another area that has a significant presence of tech talent. So what this really means is when you are considering a location for an office, making sure that it's convenient to where the targeted employees are living. So one of the things that I wanted to also talk about really had to do with how active the tech industry is in the San Diego area. And since they are the largest employer of tech talent, and I recently conducted an analysis of tech leasing activity across the nation and in the largest markets, and wanted to share that information with you because San Diego performed very well. That overall, the tech industry leasing activity in the second quarter of 2020 was down 46% across the US compared to 2019. All leasing activity was down by 44%, so it wasn't that much different than all leasing activity. But when you look at market by market, it ranged anywhere from being up 71% in Atlanta to minus 74% in the San Francisco Bay Area. So where the tech industry had expanded the greatest and where it is the largest, saw pretty much the most significant drop off in activity. And that was the San Francisco Bay Area, it was Manhattan, and it was Seattle, seeing the largest drop offs. But San Diego actually saw a 58% increase in its leasing activity during the second quarter compared to where it was in 2019. And so what that is telling me, along with the DC and Atlanta areas, is that tech companies had confidence to continue to move forward with their expansion plans in the area because they firmly believe that the tech talent that they require are in these areas and that things will rebound and recover and enable them to fulfill their plans. So we're pretty excited to be able to report that San Diego saw a pretty substantial increase in its leasing activity. And it's really a continuation of what's been going on really over the last couple of years, where tech companies have found the talent in San Diego very favorable for their business plans. So when we put this report together, we also ranked each one of the markets from 1 to 50. And how we did that is we looked at how large the tech talent labor pool was. We looked at how quickly it was growing. We looked at how concentrated it was relative to the overall workforce. We looked at what does the innovation infrastructure look like. And when I say innovation infrastructure, what I'm talking about there is how many tech degree graduates are being produced and how much R&D dollars are being invested and spent in each one of those markets to sort of drive innovation. And then we also looked at, what are the operating costs in each one of these markets and whether the tech industry in each one of these markets is also growing and thriving as well. So putting together all those factors, we come up with a ranking from 1 to 50. So San Diego ended up being 19 this year, which is about the same place that it was last year. And what we also found is that the Bay Area was the #1 ranked market for the 8th year in a row for every year that we've done this report. But Washington, DC moved up from #4 to #2. Remember my previous slide where Washington, DC was the highest growth market in terms of tech leasing activity in the second quarter. There's no coincidence there. And similarly with San Diego, there's no coincidence there that we expect San Diego to move up in next year's rankings because of that increased leasing activity and because of the hiring that will result from it. We also see Canadian markets performing very well. You've got Toronto as being #4, and then markets such as Austin and Denver and Atlanta, #6, 7, and 9 that have consistently moved up every year as being attractive locations for tech employers. So some of the basic information that we try to ascertain when we look at tech talent markets, it's the same for almost any particular market. We want to look at basic supply and demand. Same like we do for real estate, same like you would do for any particular market. So on the demand side, what we're trying to look at is how many tech talent jobs have been created over the last 5 years, and how does that relate to the supply side? So on the demand side, you'll see that the San Francisco Bay Area and Toronto by far created the most tech talent jobs. The Bay Area was about 90,000. Toronto was about 80,000. And then there was a significant drop off to hit number 3 with New York, which was 45,000. You'll see San Diego in the number 24 position, created about 10,000 tech talent jobs over that time period, ranking number 24 again, and at a growth rate of 16%. So that 16% is not a very high growth rate, but we expect that to increase in the years ahead as much of the commercial leasing activity to grow the tech talent presence in San Diego is really starting to get traction. But that compares to 31% in the Bay Area and 37% in Toronto. Vancouver, as I mentioned before, Canadian markets are doing well. That grew 48% and generated about 21,000 new jobs. On the smaller side of the equation, which is the right side, those are markets that are under 50,000 square feet. 50,000 workers in terms of their workforce. You've got markets that are lesser known like Orlando, Nashville, Indianapolis, and Pittsburgh, all growing pretty substantially, but at higher typical rates that are ranging anywhere from 20s to the 30% range. And so that's interesting. The smaller markets are growing pretty quickly, but so are the larger markets. And now on the supply side, what we did was we looked at how many tech degree graduates were produced last year in each one of these major markets. So generally the larger metropolitan areas and the areas that are very highly populated by universities tend to produce the most tech degree graduates. So that's, not really surprising. So what you'll see there is that New York, Washington, DC produce the highest number of tech degree graduates because they're very large areas. And then Boston, LA, and the Bay Area are the next on the list. And Boston obviously has a large amount of universities within the region. San Diego is number 15, producing a little over 4,200 graduates each year. But what's important to note for San Diego, it is among the highest growth rate in the amount of tech degree graduates. So you'll see compared to 5 years ago, San Diego is generating 76% more tech degree graduates than it did 5 years ago. And that is right on par with Dallas with 77%. And those two markets are the highest of the 50 that we track. So that is a very, very positive thing for San Diego, because when you ask major tech employers what is their number one aspect that they're looking for, it's where is the tech talent being produced and what is the quality of that tech talent. And that really determines where they are going to try to fulfill their expansion plans. So when those two aspects are combined, the basic supply and demand, we end up with what we call a brain drain or a brain gain. So what a brain gain means is that you've created more jobs than you've produced tech talent. Therefore, people have to move to that area. You have to import talent, so you have a brain gain. On the other end of the spectrum is where you've produced more supply than demand, and you had a brain drain because those graduates had to move to other locations to take jobs. Now we realize that not everyone who goes to school in a particular region plans to work there. But if there are ample jobs created in that region for the tech degree graduates, they're more likely to stay. So the largest brain gain markets are the Bay Area at about 52,000, followed by Toronto, Vancouver, Seattle, Charlotte, and Denver. And on the brain drain side, you've got markets like Boston, Washington, DC, New York, and Los Angeles, where they produce a high level of tech degree graduates, but don't quite have the same size or established tech industry in their markets. So what's important for those markets is that tech employers look to them to establish potentially new operations or to continue to grow or to recruit in those markets. So San Diego is kind of in that same ballpark where you had a brain drain of minus 6,800, which is a number that has consistently diminished over time. many years ago, that number was much closer to 10,000. But employers have realized that San Diego is producing a large volume of tech degree graduates, and they're of very high quality. So they have been both recruiting and establishing existing presences and expanding in the San Diego market, as we have seen from the increased leasing activity. So one of the other things that we looked at is we wanted to understand, where is the tech talent coming from that actually lives and works in San Diego? So we tapped into our labor analytics group, who helped us analyze some LinkedIn data to really kind of determine that. And so if you look in the far left of the screen in the orange color, you'll see the total tech talent workforce that we're able to identify as doing a technical job on LinkedIn, and what university that they attended. And so what you'll see, whether it's the total workforce, the 2 years or less of experience in the middle, or the 10 years or more of experience on the extreme right, is that the talent is largely homegrown, and the University of California, San Diego is the largest contributor to tech talent in the San Diego region. There's very little tech talent from outside of the region. You do have some Southern California, you've got UCLA and USC as well that are coming down to San Diego. So I think you have both locally homegrown talent who either lives in the area and went to school there, or went to school there from outside the region, and also a lot of returning residents who went to schools outside of the San Diego area, perhaps at UCLA and USC, given the high desirability of wanting to stay in San Diego. But this is also very illuminating data that employers can also look at, that they have a very strong chance of capturing local talent if they do expand and continue to grow in the San Diego region. So with regard to quality versus cost, it's a question that we get all the time from our clients wanting to better understand that, because we can easily tell them how many tech talent workers there are in the region, how many tech degree graduates are there going to be, but not necessarily what is the basic kind of quality versus cost trade-off. And so in order to determine that, we had to provide some sort of metric of what quality is, knowing that quality is also something that's very subjective. So again, we work with our labor analytics partners to sort of come up with a metric that best sort of captures what quality looks like. And we said, since software developers are really the most in-demand tech talent skill, we said, let's find software developers who had at least 3 years of experience and graduated from a top 25 computer sciences program. And let's plot that against how many of them are there in each region and what their concentration is, and how does that relate to the average wage cost. So with regard to the San Diego region, UC San Diego was among the top 25 top universities as ranked by US News and World Report. It also included UCLA and USC, and I just put that as sort of a reference point, since there are a decent amount of individuals who attended those universities who are working in San Diego. So what you'll see is that San Diego ranks pretty high, in the very high quality range. Not quite as high as the San Francisco Bay Area and Seattle, but very high as it relates to quality, and the cost is in sort of the moderate range. So we've got a pretty good trade-off between quality and cost. But in terms of overall value relative to other markets, it's really the Canadian and Midwestern markets that represent the greatest value. And so that's Toronto and Vancouver. You'll see them as being in the very high category, not as high quality as San Diego, but substantially lower cost. You'll also see markets such as Indianapolis, Detroit, and Pittsburgh in the very high quality range, and also in the relatively low cost category. So those are markets that many employers are also looking at in terms of trying to maximize the cost versus quality trade-off. So as we look at the actual cost to operate in these 50 markets across the US and Canada, we looked at the 10 highest and 10 lowest cost markets. And how we determined that was we looked at an operation that would encompass about 500 total employees. We said half of those employees are going to be tech workers and half of those employees are going to be non-tech workers. And so the non-tech workers would be marketing, sales, operations, and other support functions. And then we said, what are the total wages that would be paid for those 500 individuals, and how much would the office space cost to put them in 75,000 square feet? And so what we found over the 50 markets that we tracked was, of those two metrics, and we realized there are other costs as well, that 95% of those costs were attributable to wages. So the cost of real estate is a relatively small component in the total cost structure for tech employers. So what you'll see there is that the San Francisco Bay Area was the highest cost region at $62 million annually. And that was almost 10 million more than the number 2, 3, and 4 regions, New York, Seattle, and Washington, DC. San Diego came in at number 7 at about 48 million. So that was a good 14 million less than the San Francisco Bay Area, which is a very substantial number in annual cost, because obviously over time that adds up to be an even larger savings. So, San Diego is not one of the cheapest markets, but at the same time, it's substantially less than the Bay Area and has a really great pipeline of new talent. So on the lower end of the scale, you'll see the first 5 markets on your screen are Canadian markets. So the Canadian markets represent the cheapest markets that are out there, but many of these also offer high quality. You'll also see some smaller markets in the South and Midwest, such as Jacksonville, Pittsburgh, even Sacramento, California, and Nashville, Tennessee. So more specifically on real estate, as it relates to where San Diego stacks up on the cost for office space and apartment rents. So on the office rent side, at the end of last year, San Diego rents overall were about $38 per square foot full service annual, which was the 8th highest in the country, substantially less than Manhattan in the Bay Area. And on the apartment rental side, these are for all apartment unit sizes. The average per month was $2,040, which was about half that of New York and substantially less than the San Francisco Bay Area. One other question that we get asked also quite often is, how affordable are these apartment rents to the tech workers? So what we did there was said, how much are the average tech workers getting paid? And what is the average rent in San Diego? And what percent of their income does that represent? So 30% is the number that represents what's affordable. So you should not be paying more than 30% of your income toward housing. So what you'll see is San Diego came out to be number 9, with about 22% of the average tech worker's wage going toward rent. And that is about half the level of what it is in New York and substantially below even Los Angeles and the Bay Area. Again, some of the cheapest and most affordable markets were in Canada. You have Montreal, and also in the Midwest, Indianapolis, Columbus, and all those markets where you're looking at 12 to 13% of your total wages go to housing. So those are much more affordable markets to be in on a relative basis. So what we also included in this year's report, which will allow tech employers to better compare other markets, is we looked at 25 additional markets that were below the top 50 in the US and Canada. And we also provided some basic information and rankings of those markets. And what we found there was Waterloo in Canada, which is a region just outside of Toronto, ended up being our number 1 market in these next 25. And Waterloo is the home to BlackBerry. We also have Huntsville, Alabama, Omaha, Nebraska, Colorado Springs, Colorado, and Dayton, Ohio as the top 5 markets in this particular category. So sometimes when people think about, what's off the beaten path, what market should I be considering, ones that are sort of in the San Diego, I shouldn't say region, but in the west or near them. You've got the Inland Empire, you've got Las Vegas, and Tucson, Arizona as markets that are, also viable in the south. And then finally, we also included the top 10 markets in Latin America. So many of the tech companies are looking outside of the US to grow their tech talent and for certain roles and functions. And we have included here the 10 largest markets in Latin America. And the top 3 we found was Sao Paulo, Brazil, Mexico City, Mexico, and Santiago, Chile. And so the takeaway from Latin America is that they have been growing pretty substantially. And from what we understand, the quality of the tech talent has increased pretty significantly over the last few years. And their market is largely driven by US tech companies outsourcing into Latin America. What you'll also see is that the cost structure in Latin America is dramatically less than in the US. So the average software developer in Latin America for the 10 markets that we tracked was about $40,000 US dollars. That compares to about $107,000 in the US. So it's very much cheaper than the US. Again, quality is definitely not going to be on par, but it certainly is much higher than it has been in years past. And so it is an area where there is much greater demand and information on for Latin America. And then finally, the last thing I just wanted to inform you about before we get into the Q&A part of our discussion is that we also have what we call a Tech Talent Analyzer tool. So in total, this report comprises of about 100 pages, and it includes a lot of different metrics. Each one of the 50 markets has its own sort of page on details. But this Tech Talent Analyzer tool, which is available to anyone on the CBRE research website, allows you to look at each one of these metrics and sort them accordingly. So if you had gone into the sort market feature and said, I want to know what the score is for each one of these markets from 1 to 50, you could do that. You could also look at how large the tech talent labor pool is, what the average tech talent wages are from low to high, what is the educational attainment rate in each one of these markets, and you could also look at the cost by market from high to low. The second thing that you could do under the Select Market tab, so is if you don't really know what markets you might be interested in, this allows you to answer 4 or 5 basic questions saying, I'm interested in a small market. I want it to have, very high quality tech talent. I want it to have a medium-sized tech degree graduate pipeline, and I'm a little bit less sensitive to cost. And then what it does is it comes up with the markets that meet those parameters, and it allows you to go in and explore, what are the details of each one of those markets. So I'd encourage you to go to the CBRE website. Easiest way is to Google CBRE Scoring Tech Talent 2020. It'll get you to the website. You can look at the full report. You can also go to the Tech Talent Analyzer and sort of play around with the data and use that, as it best suits you. And with that, I'm going to turn it back over to Kevin and Dennis to administer our Q&A. So thank you.
Colin, that was a truly fascinating presentation about what's going on in the job market. A lot of surprises in there. I know I have a couple of questions. First of all, who authorized you to include Canada in there? So yeah. No, we're a global. We compete globally. We understand that, and it was interesting seeing how competitive some of those Canadian markets there.
Yeah. I mean, oftentimes when we do this, when we first did this report, it was U.S. only. And then the question we started getting pretty immediately is, can you do this for other markets? Because the tech industry is global in nature, and they want to try to better understand what's happening in each one of these markets across the country. So we've tried to continue to expand the markets that we're covering in this for the benefit of the the tech occupiers, and it gives you a better understanding of what your competitive position is in all of these markets.
The other question I have, I know Dennis, I know you may have a couple questions. Well, is Colin, when you were doing this, and I know you were doing this for the San Diego region, what was really what data point did you look at and say, wow, I'm kind of really surprised? What were you surprised about? Was it the brain drain? Was it the fact of the leasing, the difference between the Bay Area and San Diego? What was it that really stood out for you when you were putting this together?
Yeah, I mean, when I put this together, I mean, I've always sort of known about San Diego as being an area where the tech industry has thrived for a long period of time, and also had a pretty strong life sciences practice or ecosystem there. Is that I was surprised at how in the earlier years of doing this, that the growth rate wasn't quite as strong as it was, which told me that a lot of people were really missing the understanding of San Diego and what its positive attributes are in terms of the quality of the tech talent and the volume of tech talent that's being produced by universities in the area. And so I was really surprised by that. So as we talk more and more with our clients and tech employers and trying to better explain that story, we saw the growth rate in San Diego start to accelerate. And I think you're really seeing that in the leasing activity over the last couple of years.
And I think, Dennis, from Tech San Diego's point of view, and you're on the board of directors, it really validates the investments that we've made in talent, including, those of you, we have a full-time executive that sits up at UC San Diego and SDSU that connects both talent and companies to the universities to make sure that we're keeping more of that talent here. We want to put a stop to some of that brain drain. Now, we may not be able to absorb all of them right away, but certainly make them more aware of the opportunities that are in the region, because we don't have a lot of big Fortune 500 companies. We have small, mid-sized companies that oftentimes don't have the career visibility that some of the larger companies have.
Yeah, so some of the things that I've given some thought to, and then I have a question for Colin. One of the biggest things we hear from our surveys with tech graduates in San Diego is, I'm having a hard time finding great job offers in San Diego, so I have to head off to the Bay Area or Austin, Boston, or whatever for my first job. Now, some of that's where they want to go. That's sort of been the Mecca, and they know that there's a lot of variables for job opportunities there. If the first job doesn't work out, they can go across the street. And then but it's, gee, where's the jobs in San Diego? And then one of our biggest issues that we have with our members that are employers for tech talent in San Diego is, where's the talent? I can't seem to hire all the people that I'd like to hire.
Mm-hmm.
That still is kind of an interesting disconnect for me, but I've seen that gap go, Colin, from 10,000 to 8,000, now 6,000. And with a big presence, we're going to just start feeling it. We've seen it on the real estate side from leasing, but we're about to see it on the employment side from both Apple and Amazon. That brain drain could go way down. Now, obviously, they're going to be competing for Qualcomm talent because it's really hardware development for Apple. But I think we'll see that brain drain go down. So my question to Colin would be, San Diego's, I guess, if you take an overall look, number 19. There's no short-term plan.
14 if you don't count, if you're not counting the Canadians.
Yeah, 14 if you don't count the Canadians. So let's say you want to go from 14 to 10. What are the 1 or 2 or 3 factors you think that are most within San Diego's prospects or capabilities to move up? I was a little bit surprised that our cost of living is not, obviously our commercial rental rates are lower, but we have the same income tax as California, the same gasoline tax, the same utility costs. So it's mostly rent is where you're seeing a difference in cost of living. But what are some of the things that San Diego could do that in the next 2 to 5 years could move them from 14 to 10 in the U.S.?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest factors is going to be growing the job opportunities. I mean, that's really sort of what drives it, because that creates the ecosystem, for tech degree graduates to want to stay in San Diego, and it creates the opportunity for those who have left but are native San Diego to move back, or others to just move into the area. So it comes down to that, housing opportunities is a big deal as well. But from when we talk to our clients and then when they're recruiting, what they hear quite often from the recent graduates that they're trying to recruit and hire is that they're looking for, obviously, high wages is something that's important to them. The employer isn't necessarily looking to spend the top dollar, but for the employee, that's what they're looking for. And, more important to that, they're looking for a lot of opportunities. So that's why the Bay Area and some of these larger markets have grown so much, is because if you work for one company and you find that for whatever reason you don't like it, there's 10 or 20 other companies that you could go and work for. That's not really been established yet in the San Diego area in terms of these major employers. But based on a lot of the activity that you're seeing down in your market now in terms of leasing, that's starting to occur. And then once one of these major companies really starts to establish a presence, they will all start to come down there because they have the fear of missing out on the quality of talent that San Diego's produced. So for the longest time, it's been, Qualcomm has been the biggest employer, and there really has not been a number two. But as far as from what I've been hearing, and I know from what you've been seeing, Dennis, that's starting to really change, and that's going to accelerate the growth in San Diego in terms of tech and being able to retain the talent that's been created there.
And I think that if you look at the growth of the life science, Colin, you alluded to this a little bit. If you look at the growth of the life science as part of the innovation economy, which it obviously is, you see a lot of those skills transferable. Certainly you need domain expertise, but we have a pretty good data science initiative in Tech San Diego. And so we are capturing medical device companies and other companies that are interested in what Tech San Diego is doing. And I'm sure you captured some of those in your data, but the health of the life science is only going to increase those opportunities. And we are starting to have some major employers. You look at Viasat, Illumina, even companies like Teradata, right? So they're hiring, not only by the dozens, but sometimes by the hundreds. And so you do see some of these other companies starting to approach the level. I mean, Qualcomm is, that's our people understand Qualcomm, and certainly it helps the region, and other companies want to locate next to Qualcomm to take advantage of some of that talent. So but there are starting to be other companies, I think, that will become to be on par with what hopefully what Qualcomm's doing.
Yeah, and there's more and more crossover every year between tech and life sciences, because so much of what life science is doing is moving over into the tech space in terms of how they're analyzing their therapeutics and all that kind of stuff beyond the science. So you see a lot of that. And I think two areas that are in addition to life sciences, obviously with the pandemic, risen dramatically in importance. So is sort of the whole sort of data analytics and cybersecurity, which are also two areas where San Diego certainly has a strong foothold in, and we'll see growth moving into the future once we're sort of through the most of this pandemic and the economy starts to take off again. So I think San Diego is uniquely positioned to be able to take advantage of that.
Yeah, and I'm just, from an organization point of view in Tech San Diego, I really feel validated in what we're, the investments that we're making and really positioning San Diego as a career destination. Because, if you look at the data and, you could look at the cost of living and say, well, geez, we're 8, but, who we're up against, and the quality of life in San Diego would seem to position us very well, especially with the amount of quality talent, right? It's not just talent. It's not, these second-rate universities. These are world-class universities. UC San Diego, SDSU, they're top 25. And so understanding the quality of that talent coming out should position us fairly well. And I'm glad to see Tech. I really feel validated by a lot of the activities that Tech San Diego is undertaking as an organization to promote the idea of the region as a career destination.
Yeah. And one other thing I would add in there is that, with this remote working becoming much more pervasive and tech companies being much more flexible on that end, that is going to provide a lot of opportunity for people to, in San Diego, graduated from San Diego, to be employed outside of the region, but remain in San Diego.
So one of the things that I've observed, and is somewhat anecdotal, is a lot of the graduates, when they're attracted to a job offer right out of school, sometimes feel that safety or security of going to work for a big brand name tech company. So two of my children right out of graduation went to work for Oracle.
Mm-hmm.
And so the big guys, Google, Amazon, Apple, etc. And then as they build a 3 to 5 year resume, they might feel, okay, well, now let me look at a startup or a higher salary or a little bit more risk because I've got a resume I can fall back on. And San Diego traditionally hasn't had a lot of those, although as Teradata is getting bigger and Illumina is getting bigger, and certainly Qualcomm. But now Apple and Amazon and some other big players coming into this market. One of my children who did go to work for Oracle started in the Santa Monica, went to UC Santa Barbara, grew up in San Diego, but went to the Santa Monica office. So we're already seeing that you can go to a big resume building industry leader, but you don't have to go to Silicon Valley or a 45-minute commute or $5,000 rent in order to start that career.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And and we shouldn't, this region should not be scared of having Amazon and Apple come to town. It should be something that we should look forward to because, people don't have 20-year careers anymore, right? Like you said, they work someplace for a couple of years, 3 to 5 years, and they're in the marketplace. And so, that talent that works at Amazon and Apple in the region is going to be available to even small, mid-sized companies here in the region as well. And so, just a caution. I know some in the tech, I've talked to several tech executives that are concerned about that. It's, first of all, it's happening whether you're concerned or not about it. But second, I would really position to them is we should really think about embracing that and having them as part of our tech community. The more engaged and ingrained they're going to be in tech, and not just Tech San Diego, but in the region, the more chances we're going to have to let them know about the other companies in town that they could work at besides those big companies.
Yeah. I mean, in that case, the more, the bigger, the better, the larger and more dynamic tech infrastructure and tech ecosystem you can build, the more attractive is it going to be for others to want to come there. So it's like the Bay Area. I mean, everybody's there. It's super competitive, but at the same time, it's one of the most robust markets in the country. And that's the same thing, with San Diego, that the more you have there, the better it's going to be.
So, so those of us, again, I've talked about the myths of what's going on. And one of the myths is that, it's going to be really easy to find talent and that, maybe we should lower our budgets on bringing in new people. And I think with the data that you're showing, especially as a leading indicator, the leasing, the amount, 58% increase over last year during a pandemic, I think what that's telling us is that that's not correct and that the talent wars, although it may have abated a little bit during the pandemic, they're still there. You still need to focus on talent acquisition, marketing efforts, and what you're doing to position your company as an employer of choice. That's one of the takeaways that I'm taking from this, and I'll make sure to get that message out to our network as well. And we'll make this, obviously, we're going to make this available on YouTube. The one question I have, Colin, and this is a statement. You guys really do. I mean, I want to congratulate you guys. You guys really do a good job. There's a lot of leasing companies and it's very transactional and you could go out and get any leasing companies, but there's very few that truly understand the market and what drives those decisions. And so I really want to congratulate you and your team and Dennis and his team locally about going that extra mile and understanding what companies want beyond just what's the square footage and what's the lease term, right? Because those are the basics. Anyone could do that, but not everyone could do the kind of research and analysis. And the fact that you guys have that available on your website is just amazing. If there's people listening on YouTube or people on and they want to contact you guys, Dennis, how do they do that?
Well, if you want, I'll send out a contact for both Colin and for myself to all of the attendees on today's call.
Well, that's not going to work if they watch it a
I'll
month
do
from
that
now
for
on
you.
YouTube.
I'll do that through you and Sarah, Kevin. Or watch this later on YouTube? Well, we probably should have that closing slide, right, with the contact information.
Yeah, feel free to email us. You see my name on the screen. It's colin.yosakochi@cbre.com. Same thing for Dennis. Feel free to reach out to us. You know, we're happy to engage and help as where we can.
Dennis, what's your email?
It's the same rubric, Dennis.Hurst, like Hearst Castle, no relation. Dennis.Hurst@cbre.com.
Colin, again, I want to congratulate you on that presentation. That was truly fascinating. We'll make sure to get it out to some of our folks regionally here in San Diego. Some folks couldn't attend the webinar that wanted to. We'll make sure we'll get this out. We'll put it on YouTube. Fascinating information. I want to thank both you and Dennis. Dennis is a board member for Tech San Diego. Thanks for all your support. Any closing remarks from you, Dennis? Colin?
Thank you, Kevin. Thank you, Kevin, for the opportunity to continue to present our resources to our audience. And I hope this has really given people some food for thought. We are very analytical in our approach to real estate decisions. And this is just an illustration of how analytical and how granular we can be to help make some really, really data-driven and defensible decisions. So we thank you for the opportunity, and it's been my pleasure to be a member of the board of Tech San Diego. Thanks. And thank you, Colin. Great work.
Thank you. Thank you all.
All right. Always visit techsd.org for future events or more information on the talent activities that we're engaged in. And we'll go ahead and end this webinar. Again, thank you for everyone attending, and we'll have this on YouTube in a couple of days. Thank you very much.
Thank you.